Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. If you've been following along, you've already written your first C# program and learned about variables, data types, and basic arithmetic operations. Today, we're going to unlock a critical part of programming: control structures. These are the tools that allow us to make decisions and repeat actions in our code, making our programs much more dynamic and powerful. So, if you're ready to take your C# skills to the next level, let's dive right in. First, let's take a moment to understand what control structures are and why they're so important. Imagine you're writing a program that needs to decide whether someone is old enough to drive, or maybe you want to repeat a task multiple times without having to write the same code over and over again. This is where control structures come into play. They allow your program to make decisions and control the flow of execution based on certain conditions. In C#, the most common control structures are if statements. These allow us to execute code only if a certain condition is true. Else statements. These handle what happens when the if condition is false. Else if statements. These are used when you have multiple conditions to check. For loops, these let us repeat a block of code a specific number of times. While loops, these keep repeating a block of code as long as a condition is true. Understanding how to use these control structures effectively will make you a much better programmer, so let's start with if statements. Let's kick things off with if statements. In programming, if statements are like the crossroads that determine which path your program should take. Imagine you're at a traffic light. If the light is green, you go. If it's red, you stop. This decision-making process is exactly what if statements do in your code. They check a condition and decide whether to execute a block of code based on whether the condition is true or false. Let's look at a simple example. Go ahead and open Visual Studio, and in the main method, type the following code. Here's what's happening. We declare an integer variable age and assign it a value of 18. The if statement checks if age is greater than or equal to 18. If this condition is true, the code inside the curly braces will execute, printing, "You are an adult" to the console. Let's run the program and see what happens. Because age is 18, which satisfies the condition age greater than or equal to 18, the program will print, "You are an adult." Simple, right? Now, what if we wanted to handle the situation where the person isn't 18 or older? This is where the else statement comes in. An else statement is like a backup plan. It tells your program what to do if the if condition isn't met. It's like saying, if the light is green, go, else, stop. Let's expand our previous example to include an else statement. Modify your code like this. Here's what's happening now. If the condition age greater than or equal to 18 is true, the program will print, "You are an adult." If the condition is false, which it is, since age is 16, the program will skip the if block and execute the code inside the else block, printing, "You are not an adult." Go ahead and run this code. The output will be, "You are not an adult." This is a very basic decision-making structure, but it's incredibly powerful. But what if we need to check more than one condition? Let's introduce the else if statement. The else if statement allows you to check multiple conditions sequentially. It's like having a set of different traffic lights. If one is red, you move on to check the next. Let's say we want to categorize people into adults, teenagers, and children. Here's how we can do that. What we're doing here. First, we check if age is 18 or older. If true, we print, "You are an adult." If that condition is false, we move on to check if age is 13 or older. If true, we print "you are a teenager." If neither of these conditions is true, we fall back to the else block, which means the person is younger than 13, so we print "you are a child." Go ahead and run this code. Since age is set to 16, the program should output "you are a teenager." This else-if structure allows us to handle multiple scenarios elegantly and efficiently. But decision-making isn't the only thing control structures are good for. They're also essential for repeating actions. Let's take a look at loops. Now that we've covered how to make decisions, let's talk about repeating actions. This is where loops come in. Loops are a way to repeat a block of code multiple times without having to write it out over and over again. The first type of loop we'll look at is the for loop. A for loop is perfect when you know exactly how many times you want to repeat a block of code. Here's a simple example of a for loop. Let's break this down. The for loop starts by initializing a counter variable I to 1. It then checks the condition I equals 5. As long as this condition is true, the loop will keep running. After each iteration, I is incremented by 1 using the I++ statement. Inside the loop, we're printing the current iteration number to the console. When you run this code, the output will be The for loop ran 5 times, once for each value of I from 1 to 5. This is great when you know how many times you need to loop, but sometimes you want to keep looping until a condition is met. That's where the while loop comes in. Here's an example of a while loop. Here's what's happening. We start by declaring a counter variable count and setting it to 1. The while loop checks the condition count equals 5. If the condition is true, the loop runs and prints the current value of count. After each iteration, we increment count by 1. The output of this code will be The loop stops when count is greater than 5, so it only prints 1 through 5. The key difference between for and while loops is that while loops are great when the number of iterations isn't fixed from the start. Alright, now that you've got a good grasp of if statements and loops, it's time for a challenge. We're going to build a simple number guessing game. Here's what the game will do. 1. The program will randomly choose a number between 1 and 10. 2. The user will try to guess the number. 3. The program will tell the user if their guess is too high, too low, or correct. 4. The game will continue until the user guesses the correct number. Here's a basic structure to help you get started. This program uses a while loop to keep asking the user for guesses until they get it right. It's a fun way to apply what you've learned about loops and conditional statements. Give it a try, and see if you can make it even better. Maybe add a feature to count how many guesses it took, or limit the number of guesses allowed. And there you have it. Today, we've covered some of the most essential concepts in programming, making decisions with if statements and repeating actions with loops. These are the building blocks for writing more complex and interactive programs in C#. In our next video, we'll take things further by exploring methods, which will help you organize your code and avoid repetition. Trust me, once you get the hang of methods, your code will be much more manageable. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. And as always, feel free to leave any questions or suggestions for future videos in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.